So Vivian, how's your health, first of all?
Eh, Good, thank you. A work in progress, like anyone else. So yeah, I managed my lymphoma treatments. Very fortunate that I have a number of good options, to keep it going. So it's all good. I don't think about it much. It's
Yeah, okay. It's the best you can do. Don't think about it much and take care of your medication, whatever that is.
exactly, yeah, yeah. So red wine, good medication.
The best medication for everything.
Yeah.
So you chose to have 15 songs in Diamond Star Halos. Were you so
Yeah.
confident about your material that you chose to have so many songs in an album and 61 minutes duration?
Um, It wasn't like that. It was just that there were a lot of songs, because it had been, I think, 7 years since the last record. And, this, the whole process came about very haphazardly. We were supposed to go on tour in summer of 2020. And when COVID happened and everything shut down, we, you know, Joe called everyone and said, "Hey, let's make a record." Um, so I know that everyone in the band writes songs, and there are always a lot of songs. But so it's just not like we sat down and we said, "Hey, let's make this kind of a record, and let's have this many songs." We just started recording, and before you know it, we had that many songs. We actually stopped at 14. We had 14 songs, and then Phil wrote the song with
I can I can hear you well. See, I can hear you well. The your image is frozen, and
Oh,
I think your internet is not stable enough.
it's not. No, I'm at a hotel in
Mhm.
Hollywood, and it's not great.
Okay, okay,
So I'm
okay.
sorry.
Let's continue. Okay, no problem, no problem.
But so yeah, we had 14 songs, and then Phil uh, had just written a song with a songwriter called Dave Bassett in LA, and he sent the song to all of us and said, "Hey, I just wrote this with this guy, and I know the album's finished. We got 14 songs, but before I offer this song to anyone else, does anyone think it sounds like a Def Leppard song?" And we all went,
Okay, it's the first single.
"Well, yeah." Ironically, it ended up being the first single. Uh, so it's a very, very, very Def Leppard kind of song. It's got all the hallmarks of a Def Leppard
Mhm.
hit. It's got all the all the 70s goodness. So, which is another thing. This record really reminded us of the 1970s. At some point during the recording, we communicated mostly by email because of the different time zones. Um, and we'd wake up in the morning, there'd be an email from Joe or an email from Sav or whatever, and so we had this conversation, this thread going on, and we were all saying how much the record reminded us, like, oh, that sounds so 1973 or 1974. It reminds me of watching Top of the Pops. So and again, that was a subconscious thing. It's not like we set out to make a song that had those elements of the era that influenced us. We all came of age musically in the 1970s and the early 70s with the glam rock movement, with Mark Bolan and David Bowie and whatnot. So, those influences just sort of came through. So, uh, it was just an easy record to make creatively. It was a difficult record for me to make uh, technically because I'm not a technical person, and I was expecting to go on tour, and all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, I got to learn how to operate software. And so I had a bit of a panic moment when we first started. So I was just the whole time playing catch up. There were so many songs that came in. It was just overwhelming at the time. But at the same time, we had the luxury of not having a deadline or a schedule for the record. Nobody knew we were making a record. It was just do it at your own time. So, you know, you wake up in the morning, you go to the Dropbox, and there'd be more files, and I download it and listen to it, and you know, and I'd think, you know, I don't feel like singing today. I don't feel like playing guitar today. So I'd go walk my dog, and then I'd come back to it, and I'd do it when I felt like doing it, you know. And as a guitar player and as a singer, it was an easy record to make that way, because I would record a guitar part or guitar solo, and I'd listen to it, and I'd think, you know, that's 90%, but I could do better. And then I'd just walk away. And when I felt inspired, I'd come back and pick up my guitar and play some more, you know, and get it to where it was right. So I think in terms of the playing and the singing, I think this is I think the performances on this record are some of the best that we've ever done, individually and collectively. There's just that easiness to it, you know.
And speaking about the guitar, is it true that you recorded the album with your black Les Paul that you used in albums like Holy Diver?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been playing that guitar a lot, because I use that guitar exclusively when I play with Last in Line, my side band. So, but then I've had it at home. I've been playing it so much over the recent years that it happened to be at my house. It was right there. So I did end up recording most of it with that Les Paul. Yeah, but I did have a.
Did you want to get that vibe? Did you want to get that vibe from the early 80s? Don't know. It's all psychology in the pandemic.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, but to be honest, mostly because it was just there. You know, it's like I'm looking at. Okay, I need a guitar. Here's one. You know. So, but I did. You know, I don't have too many guitars at home. I live on the East Coast now in New Hampshire, and most of my guitars are here in California in Def Leppard's storage facility. I have a lot of guitars now. I'm not a collector, but over the years I've acquired a lot of guitars. So I have maybe 6 or 7 at home in New Hampshire, and that Les Paul happens to be one of them. So it was featured a lot on the record, but mostly just because it was convenient.
There has been lots of talk about Joe Elliott's statement that Diamond Star Helios is capable of being what Hotel California was for the Eagles and what Rumors was for Fleetwood Mac. What do you think made him say such a thing? And there was such a buzz on the internet, and what is he saying?
I think maybe he was drinking the red wine. but no, it is a great record, and aside from it being a great record, I mean, in this day and age, as you know, a lot of people make great records, but it takes more than that for a record to be a success. It's very difficult to reach so many people and have a record be so ubiquitous as those records that you mentioned. I mean, this is a very, very different era for music and music marketing, but it's encouraging to us that the response to the record so far has been extremely favorable. And equally as important is the fact that this is, we're now with a major label again. This is the first record we've put out with a major label in about, I don't know, 14 years.
From the Sparkle Lounge.
Correct, yeah, it's been a long time.
Through Frontiers, through ER Music, and now again with Universal.
Yeah, and not only that, not only are we with a major label again, but there is genuine enthusiasm with the label. I mean, there's excitement there. We can tell that it's not just a routine record release for Universal. They actually do support the record and they believe in it. So those elements might make it a possibility. It could go on to be a very, very successful record. I think it deserves to be, and we certainly hope it
yeah.
does.
Do you think that modern music business can have another Hysteria or another Pyromania?
Probably not. No, not to that scale. Because, you know, when you think about the music business back in that era, the channels were fewer. I mean, right now, I think we live in just such a fragmented world, you know, with the internet and with cell phones, and, you know, everyone has their own little niche, you know, their own little world that you live in. I don't think it's as easy to have music be so ubiquitous to where it seeps into the culture as much. You know, rock radio is not what it used to be at all. Maybe it's different in Greece, but certainly here in North America, it's not encouraging. It's not very supportive of new music. And even if it was, I mean, people just don't listen to it as much as they used to in the 1980s because we're all looking at our phones, you know, and on the internet. So
There's
it
so
is,
much music out there, so much music out there that you
yeah.
don't know which one to listen to.
And a lot of it does fly under the radar as well. You know, I frequently hear of records about a year or 2 years after they've been released. You know, I'm going, really? They have a new record out? I didn't even know. So you have to be more proactive, I think, to go and source music. You know, and that's maybe at a certain time in life, you do that. You know, when I was a kid, I'd go to the record store on a Saturday afternoon and I'd look through albums, and, you know, but that was how we got new music then. And I was a teenager and I was excited for that kind of stuff. I don't go to record stores. They don't even exist anymore, you know. It's like, but at the same time, I don't actively search for new music, but some people of my age do. I know that Joe does. You know, Joe's a mad music fan, but I look at car stuff on the internet. You know, I'm in a car, but that's the sort of world we live in, where you know, you have so much access to whatever it is that interests you. You know, that people just tend to do that. So if people are actively looking for new music, then they'll find it. But if you're not, you know, you wouldn't even know that it's out there.
During all these years, especially after Hysteria and Adrenalize, from the time that you entered the band, let's say, Def Leppard have not been what we say a classic hard rock band. Do you think that adding new elements to your music helped you survive through all these years?
Yes, I don't think Def Leppard was ever really strictly a hard rock band. You know, even though the band developed in the era of the new wave of British heavy metal, alongside contemporaries like Iron Maiden, you know, there was always something about Def Leppard's music that was more ambitious. You know, you listen to early tracks like the Overture and whatnot, you know, there's just a lot more thought and effort going into the structure of the music as opposed to basic hard rock. Um, you know, so the development of the band musically did start very, very early, I thought, as a fan of the band. I mean, I was always an admirer of Def Leppard before I joined the band. And then obviously, you know, from Pyromania onwards, with the genius of Mutt Lange, you know, the bar was raised, the music became so much more ambitious and more developed and more open, I think, to trying new things. I mean, when you think back to Pyromania and having electronic drums in 1983, you know, there weren't a lot of bands who were doing that. In fact, I remember when Pyromania was released, I remember talking to Phil Lynott, and he was very depressed. And I said, you know, he was talking about splitting up Thin Lizzy. And I'm a huge Thin Lizzy fan. I went, what? You're going to break up Thin Lizzy? Why? And he said, Pyromania. He said, I feel like, you know, the goalposts have moved, like that record. He says, I feel old. He says, I feel irrelevant. And I went, no, please, you know, Thin Lizzy, keep it together. You're not old, you're not irrelevant. But you know, that was indicative of, you know, how groundbreaking that record was within the rock sphere, you know. And then 4 years later came Hysteria, and that, you know, you could argue that Hysteria is not even a hard rock record. You know, it's a pop record in many ways. But yet, you know, having said all that, when we play live, we are rock musicians at heart, and when we play live, it's like it becomes a rock thing. You know, it can be a pop song with melodies and vocals, but it comes across as rock when we perform live.
Def Leppard has been a band that's around for more than 40 years. How important is it to have a great new album like Diamond Star Halos? Apart from counting on the success of Hysteria and Pyromania, do you believe that you are as good as you are now?
I'm not understanding that question, Sakis.
How important is it for you to have a great new album and play songs of your new album and not counting, depending on the success of your previous ultra hits?
It's vital, actually. It's extremely important for us to do that. Some people would argue that it's a waste of time to make a new record for a band like Def Leppard because of the limited amount of record sales and revenue. I mean, we won't make, even if this record is very successful, we won't make a lot of money from it compared to performing a stadium show where we play hits from Hysteria and Pyromania, you know, and the majority of people coming to the show are going to want to hear those songs, and we will of course represent those songs. It's a good problem to have when you have so many genuine hit songs that you have to look at the list and say, well, we don't have time to play all of these. Now, having said that, we are so encouraged by the reaction to the new record that we're actually going to do something that a lot of bands in our position would not do. And that is we're going to perform a lot of the new music when we go on tour this summer, because we do feel that it fits side by side with the hits. And we feel that we can, I don't want to say get away with it, but that's kind of how you approach new music in this day and age, because a lot of people coming to the show will not be familiar with it. So you've got to strategically place new music within the show, and we've gotten to be very good at that, and we've discussed it a lot, and we've thought about it a lot, and the placement of the songs within the show is crucial, but we also do feel that the songs are immediate enough that even if somebody's not familiar with it, they'll go, oh, okay, that sounds like Def Leppard, you know.
Especially the first three singles are meant to be in your set list.
Yes, yeah, we'll definitely be playing the songs that people are hearing for sure.
Yeah. Before the end was, because I see that time is drawing to its end. I got so many things to ask you. It's not the first time that we do interview, but speaking with you with your whole career, there are so many aspects of you. Let's go back to the Dio era. I don't want to speak about this war of words or anything. I'd like you to send me to tell me your fondest memory of that era, and as you are last in line, and it's relevant with Ronnie James Dio, all this thing. And can you tell me if you do feel right now that you were his own Randy Rhoads?
Yeah, I think there was definitely a special musical chemistry with Ronnie and with that lineup. I mean, the original Dio band, right from the very first moment that we played in a rehearsal room in London in 1982, we immediately started playing, and immediately there was this chemistry, this magic that happened, and I know that Ronnie felt that, and yeah, so I do feel that was a special coming together. You know, and I know that Ronnie and I, you know, said a lot of nasty things about each other over the years. So that's never a good idea, you know. But you know, he could be a very, very funny guy. I mean, people are complex, you know, and when somebody says, well, what is so and so like, you know, it's hard to put it in a nutshell. You know, we're complex beings, so we're not black or white. We're all sorts of shades of gray. You know, there were times when Ronnie was really, really funny. And especially in those early years, you know, when we were doing Holy Diver and the Last in Line record, you know, there were times where there was an ease to everything we were doing, especially the music, you know. But then on the Sacred Heart record, you know, Ronnie had separated from his wife, Wendy, and she was still managing the band. And she didn't see the value in in the connection that we all had. She just was solely focused on it being about Ronnie. And you know, that sort of drove a wedge between us, and Ronnie's mood became very, very dark when we were making that record. Like when we did Holy Diver and Last in Line, everyone was in the studio all the time. We were all four of us, you know, encouraging each other. There was energy in the room. And by the time we got to the Sacred Heart record, you know, nobody, you know, everyone do their part, like, oh, I gotta go. You know, so there was just that the mood was dark and unhappy, and you know, unfortunately that sort of presaged the end of that lineup of the band. And but it was a very, very special band in many ways. But and my relationship with Ronnie was musically excellent, you know, but on a personal level, there were differences. I mean, he was a lot older than me. He was a hero to me. I mean, when I joined the band years before I was in that band, I was listening to Rainbow Rising and Long Live Rock and Roll and Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell. You know, I was a big fan, and then to all of a sudden be in Los Angeles and be in the room and in a band with this guy was kind of overwhelming. You know, I had this distance that I had from him because of my own fanboy thing. Yeah.
Do you feel that he approached you like Ozzy approached Randy Rhoads? Because I'm sure that there have been some guitar players technically better than you, or had a bigger name than you.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely felt that he was proud of me in a way, you know, that he had discovered me, and I was very different to these other guitar players. Yes, you're absolutely right. There were so many guitar players who were technically better than me back in 1982, and that was part of an issue that I had, because I couldn't understand why, you know, when all these great guitar players, especially in Los Angeles, and that Ronnie went all the way to the UK and Ireland to find somebody who didn't play as well as these people. So I couldn't, you know, I couldn't understand it for the longest time. I understand it now, you know, but back then I couldn't get my head together and think, well, I can't play as good as these guys. Why me? But, you know, Ronnie, I think, was proud of the fact that he discovered my raw talent, you know, and heard something in it and thought, okay, that's something different. And I remember, you know, Ronnie used to smoke a lot of pot. So when he smoked pot, he'd get very, you know, thoughtful. I remember once we were traveling in Europe, and he came over to me, and he actually did say that he was talking to Ozzy, and that Ozzy had said very complimentary things about me, you know, and about Randy, and about the similarities, that, you know, that the uniqueness of that, and that I think Ronnie always felt that, you know, he in many ways was my champion. You know, he's like, this is my guitar guy that I discovered and that I'm developing. So yeah, that was a nice Ronnie, you know, that was a good Ronnie. And but then, you know, he could be a very dark Ronnie as well. You know,
keep that side.
Yeah,
let's keep that side.